This is Leader Time by FedNet, your podcast source for remarks by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Republican Leader Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor during the lame duck session of Congress. Schumer discussed Chaplain Barry Black's hospitalization, drones over northeastern skies, plans for the fiscal year 2025 defense bill, advancing the Social Security Fairness Act, judicial nominations, and his 62-county tour. The following material is protected by copyright.
First, Madam President, our thoughts, our prayers are with our dear friend Chaplain Barry Black, who was unexpectedly hospitalized Thursday afternoon. We are relieved and thankful that he's expected to make a smooth recovery. Chaplain Black is one of the most beloved individuals in the entire Senate. Every day we gavel into session, he is always here to start us off. In prayer, delivered with his profound sense of wisdom, grace, eloquence. So we pray for the chaplain and can't wait to see him back very soon. Now on drone sightings. Yesterday, Madam President, I called on Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas to quickly deploy any available drone detecting tools to help New York and New Jersey deal with the mysterious drone sightings of the past few weeks. This week, I will also come to the floor of the Senate to seek passage of legislation that will give local officials greater authority to swiftly respond to these sightings. The reports of the past few weeks have ignited immense anxiety and confusion for millions of people across the Northeast. Thankfully, there's no reason to believe these drone sightings pose a national security threat. But even so, they can be disruptive if they fly over restrictive airspace, particularly near airports and bases. While there's no shortage of reports about possible drone activity, we still have very few answers on where some of these drones come from and who may be operating them. The people of New York and New Jersey have a lot of questions and haven't gotten many answers. We know one thing, though. Local officials now don't have the resources nor authority to get to the bottom of what's happening. This is federal jurisdiction, but of course, because drones are so new and there are so many in so many different places, including recreational users, that we need to do a lot more. So to repeat, this week, I will move for the Senate to pass legislation giving local officials the tools and authorities necessary to act, and in lockstep with the Department of Homeland Security to act quickly. This week, I will move for the Senate to pass legislation giving local officials the tools and authorities necessary to act quickly and in lockstep with the Department of Homeland Security and other agencies. Local authorities can do a lot to help answer our questions, but right now they're not empowered to do so because the federal government has total jurisdiction. In the meantime, I urge DHS to take all necessary action to deploy as many drone detecting resources as possible. Right now, they have not deployed close to enough, and that's why these questions that so many people have are going unanswered. Some of the new technology, like the Robin systems, are 360-degree radar. They can see at 360 degrees, not at one beam, and could go a long way to help local officials collect real data about where these drones are coming from. So I want to see a flock of Robin-like technology systems deployed across the New York City metropolitan area. So we need the Department of Homeland Security to spring into action. Senate business. On the NDA, the CR, WRDA, and NOMS. The Senate gavels back into session for a very busy week. We must finish our work on the NDAA. We must keep the government open, act on the Social Security Fairness Act, act on WRDA and EDA, and confirm more of the president's nominees. It's going to take cooperation from our Republican colleagues to get these things done in a timely fashion. First, as I said, we must pass our annual defense authorization bill, the NDAA. This afternoon, we'll take the first procedural vote on the NDAA package sent to us last week by the House. If cloture is invoked, I hope we can find a path to passing NDAA as soon as tomorrow. This year's NDAA is not a perfect bill, but it nonetheless has some good things that Democrats fought hard for, and that will strengthen military families and boost tech innovation here at home, something very important to me and to you, Madam President. To be sure, the NDAA has some bad provisions Democrats would not have included, and there are other provisions that were left out of NDAA which we still hope can get done elsewhere. I want to thank Chairman Reed, Member Wicker, and all the members of the Armed Services Committee for their good work on this year's defense bill. On another matter, by the end of the week, the Senate must also pass a temporary extension of government funding before December 20th, or else the government will shut down right before Christmas. Democrats have spent weeks working in good faith with our Republican counterparts on crafting a strong CR that will keep the government open while also providing much-needed disaster relief for the American people. We kept working through the weekend on finalizing an agreement, but our Republican colleagues are still sorting out through disagreements on their end, and there are many. Democrats will keep working to finish the job on passing a strong and bipartisan CR. We don't want the government to shut down during the holiday season, and I expect that many, if not most, of our Republican colleagues feel the same way. So let's finish the job. Besides keeping the government open, the Senate will also vote later this week on reauthorizing WRDA and the Economic Development Administration. Reauthorizing WRDA, the Water Resources Development Act, is vital for strengthening America's ports and waterways, preventing flood damage, protecting our wetlands, boosting our economy. Reauthorizing the EDA would provide critical investments in infrastructure, workforce, and domestic supply chains that will help the U.S. outcompete the rest of the world. The House passed WRDA and EDA with overwhelming bipartisan support last week. We expect it to pass here with equally robust support, and will work with our Republican colleagues on finding time to hold a floor vote. I thank them for working with us to get these bills done. Finally, before I get to the Social Security Fairness Act, the Senate will also be working on nominations. Later today, I will file cloture on the nominations of Benjamin Cheeks to be U.S. District Attorney for the Southern District of California, and Serena Murillo to be the U.S. District Judge for the Central District of California. Members should be ready to vote on and confirm these outstanding public servants as soon as Wednesday. I'll have more to say on our outstanding nominees throughout the week. Now on Social Security. This week, the Senate will vote to take up a bipartisan piece of legislation that impacts millions of public retirees and their spouses, the Social Security Fairness Act. I'm proud to co-sponsor this bill with my good friend, Senator Brown, as a staunch advocate for working Americans. And he is a very staunch advocate as well. The Senate has a golden opportunity to deliver for our retired firefighters, postal workers, teachers, other public servants who are retired by passing the Social Security Fairness Act this week. The bill would ensure no public retiree or spouse is denied their well-deserved Social Security benefits by repealing two widely criticized policies that have eaten away at the benefits of millions of people: the windfall elimination provision, WEP, and the government pension offset, GPO. Many of these retirees have contributed towards Social Security for years, but are being penalized because, at one point, they worked as a teacher, a firefighter, a postal worker, a police officer, or some other public sector job. The bill has already won immense support from Democrats and Republicans alike. In fact, the House passed the bill with an overwhelming 327 to 75 vote margin. There's no reason for the outcome to be different in the Senate. Senate Democrats are ready to vote yes on this legislation, and we hope our Republican colleagues will join us. Retirees have been pushing for action on WEP and GPO for decades, and this week the Senate's going to act. We will vote, and every senator will choose. Where are you? Do you stand on the side of public retirees who deserve their benefits, or bungle this golden opportunity by blocking this bill? And finally, the 62-county tour. Today is a very special day for me, because today you can flip one of my favorite numbers, 62, that's the number of counties in New York, and get another very important number, 26. For the 26th year in a row, I have just completed earlier this afternoon my annual tour of all 62 counties in New York State. It's a promise I never fail to keep. not even after being named majority leader, not even during COVID, because it's the best way I keep up with everything New Yorkers are doing, thinking, and saying. If you just, as everyone knows here, you sit at your desk, talk on the telephone, it's not the same as being out there. And the 62 county tour makes sure I'm out there week in and week out. And so I am so happy that we have completed the tour, and I can't wait in January to start doing it again for the 27th year. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
McConnell discussed the need to move the defense authorization before a tribute to retiring Indiana Senator Mike Braun.
As is typical this time of year, the Senate's attention is focused squarely on a long list of business with deadlines fast approaching. Extending government funding by Friday is our top priority. Shutting the government down is a one-way ticket to needless disruption of important functions. It's never been a winning proposition, and this time is no different. Delivering urgent disaster relief is a non-negotiable as communities across the country continue to pick up the pieces from a devastating storm season. They're watching closely for the Senate to deliver on the promise of a much-needed helping hand. And after months of unnecessary delay, the Senate will finally vote on the National Defense Authorization Act. The Armed Services Committee reported this year's NDAA 6 months ago by an overwhelming bipartisan vote. The fact that it has only reached the floor a week before Christmas is really inexcusable. So is the absence of a vote on defense appropriations legislation. And the blame for this neglect will rest squarely on the outgoing Senate majority. Ranking Member Wicker and our colleagues on the committee tried mightily to ensure that the final bill, Congress' main annual opportunity to shape national defense priorities, backs tough talk on growing threats with the tools required to meet them. But the NDAA, like all major legislation, is a compromised product. In the absence of the Senate-backed increase to top-line investments will go down as a tremendous missed opportunity. Artificial budget restraints mean that major bill provisions, like a pay raise for enlisted service members, will come at the expense of investments in the critical weapon systems and munitions that deter conflict and keep them safe. For all the talk about growing threats to America's national security, it's fast time for an honest conversation about the military requirements to meet those needs. And if this NDAA offers any valuable lesson, it's that we have a tremendous amount of work to do. Now, on an entirely different matter, my earliest participation in politics was wearing an "I Like Ike" pin on school picture day. Well, last month, the state of Indiana was chanting, "I like Mike." Mike Braun's fellow Hoosiers like him so much, in fact, they've decided to steal him back from Washington to be their governor. And if I know anything about Indiana's junior senator, he's probably looking forward to trading in the trappings of this institution for a job a lot closer to home. But I'd like to say just a few words before he goes. Years ago, a local reporter asked Mike Braun about his approach to life and to work. He told him, quote, "You live like you're going out of business every day, and it makes you healthy." For a spry former three-sport athlete like Mike, that much checks out. But needless to say, in the process of keeping him young, our colleague's mantra also brought a fair bit of political success. Sure, a cushy white-collar gig and a predictable corporate ladder would have been actually the natural next step for a high achiever fresh out of Harvard Business School. But where's the fun in that? For Mike, in order to live like you're going out of business, you have to run a business yourself. You've got to build a team and take risks, and what better place to do that than in your own hometown? Most of us are familiar with at least some of what came next for Mike and his high school sweetheart, Maureen. The life and professional lessons of Mike's dad, Amos, a decorated World War II vet, steering a 15-person operation through the aftermath of the 1980s farm crisis and turning it into a national team spread across 38 states. For years, running that success with sleeves rolled up from a trailer office and raising 4 kids along the way, 3 of whom have found their own callings in the family business. As I understand it, we have Maureen to thank that this incredible story of hard work and entrepreneurial spirit took a turn into politics in the first place. When friends around Jasper tried drafting her to run for school board, she offered them Mike instead. And so began 2 decades and counting of life in politics. Here in the Senate, Mike's going out of business approach to public service made an early impression. Careful observers ranked him at one point the most effective freshman in the chamber. He dove headfirst into legislation that mattered to him and to Indiana. He advocated passionately for farmers and for families impacted by rare diseases. He fought for outcomes, and he stood on principle. But Hoosiers will be proud to know that he still doesn't like dressing up here on the Senate floor. And who can blame him? By Mike's own admission, most of what he likes to do, tend the farm, fish, and hunt, both animals and mushrooms, he can do within 60 miles of Jasper. So it speaks to Mike's commitment to his neighbors that even though he's leaving Washington, he's not quite going home just yet, nor will he be able to hang up the coat and the tie. The trust of the people of Indiana is rightly a great source of pride for our colleague, second only to his pride in the family he and Maureen built, and I know he can't wait to get to work for all of them in Indianapolis. So I know I speak for our colleagues when I thank Mike for his service these past 6 years. Wish him all the best in his next chapter.
Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided for informational and educational purposes only, with all rights reserved. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without explicit permission from FedNet is prohibited.